Do you have anything in your home or work life that runs automatically? Maybe on a timer or a switch. A great example would be an irrigation timer in your front yard, or maybe you work at a plant and you've got a booster pump that turns on and off based off of a pressure switch. I've got lots of that in my plant. Timers for my sludge pumps. I've got level transducers all through my plant to tell me what the levels of a wet well are, and I can use SCADA to tell pumps to maintain those levels. Have you ever showed up to your home or your place of business and found that those switches aren't working or those timers were stuck open? At the least, it's annoying and a big inconvenience. At the most, it can be catastrophic. Well, when I showed up to work today, I found my primary clarifier in quite the state. I opened the grates and what did I see? A bunch of sludge that had floated to the top. So at the very least, I could tell you right away that my sludge withdrawal rate from the clarifier was too low. At the worst, I could tell you my sludge withdrawal rate had stopped altogether. Wasn't quite sure yet what the problem was, but going through a bunch of troubleshooting, I eventually figured out my timer died. It just stopped. And this is a pretty old timer. It's an Intermatic. I found its next generation replacement. And what I'm gonna do today is I'm going to replace it. We're gonna get our sludge pump timer working again. And then what I'm gonna do is take you to the whiteboard and we're going to do a grade 3 level math problem where you have to set a sludge pump timer based off of the TSS that's settling in your primary clarifier. Welcome to the Wastewater Enthusiast. If you're new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you get notified when other videos like this come out. And if you get anything out of this whatsoever, throw me a like, let me know that this helped you out and you want more content like this. And with that, let's start working on this timer. Alrighty, first thing we need to do is turn the power off. There we go. And I will double check with the multimeter off camera, but you always want to make sure that your leads are dead and there's not actually any voltage. Don't go putting your hands in panels where there could potentially be live power, even though I have the disconnect off. The only true way to tell that power is off is to use a multimeter. Now, something I noticed first is this right here is the actual timer. This is just the display and the controls. That's my timer. There's a circuit board right there. It controls everything. And what I know too is that this is my new timer. And let me get the little instructions out. This is that. And what's also nice is this has battery backup, so I can actually program it after I've turned the power off. Since I'm not going to be using this anymore, I don't have one of these with this new timer. Whoever needs to make an adjustment to the timer needs to open this panel. Okay, it's not ideal, but with the proper safety precautions, it's just an annoyance. It's not like dangerous or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap these out real quick and we will catch back up in a second. Okay, so I have the new box mounted in here. I wasn't able to get this out of this box. It's in there really good. So without, doing major surgery, I didn't want to do that. So what I'm going to do now is land my wires where they belong. And I did follow the wiring diagram and also made sure it matches the former one. See, I'm lucky here because there was already something in place. So there's not really much to figure out. I just took a picture and I'm going to make sure that my wires land where they are supposed to based off of the last timer, which did work. Okay, so let me land these wires real quick. Now, some of you may notice that I'm not using the knockouts. I'm gonna leave the door open. It's fine, I'm in a bucket. If I was outside, I would wanna use the knockouts and put weatherproof fittings right here, but it really isn't necessary since it's in a bucket. All right, it's kind of redundant. Okay, we are on here. You can see, flashy, flashy. We are ready to set our timer. So I'm gonna get this set to what my plant needs. And we are going to discuss the rest of this on the whiteboard. Let's head that way and talk about setting your sludge pump timer, the concept of it, and then we're gonna move on to the math problem. Welcome to the whiteboard. We're gonna do a quick lecture on proper primary sludge withdrawal rate, and then I'm gonna move to that math problem that I promised you. It's a grade 3 or class B, intermediate, I'll say, level math problem that you need to know how to do. Not only for an exam, but also for your job. It's really a helpful barometer on how to set a sludge pump timer. So before I get into this lecture, this is always a good time to thank my members. And I just wanna give a shout out to all of you The list keeps growing and growing, so I just thank you all for your support. To the chief operators, Nicholas, Matt R., Freddie, Michael B., Matt P., Jeff, Michael C., Carlos, Jose, Christian, Donnie, thank you all for your support. Your member live stream was last week, and there's another one coming for you at the end of March. And to the shift operators, Whitney, Jesus, Tahoe, Hank, Dave, Monterey Chameleons, Dareln, Java, Ryan, Madeline, and Jonathan, thank you all so much for your financial support. You all are helping me make this channel better. The videos are getting better, and it's reaching more and more people. We're up to 4,300 subscribers now as at the taping of this or filming of this, so that number just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's because y'all are helping me out, so thank you so much. So let's get to this lesson. Why do we withdraw sludge at the proper rate? First, we want to prevent septicity and rising sludge. That's what you saw at the very beginning of this video. When my timer didn't do what it was supposed to do, the sludge stayed in there too long. It did something called gasification, where it pretty much starts decomposing in the bottom of the clarifier, and it floated my sludge blanket. Those bubbles are buoyant, and they want to float, right? They want to go to the top of and disperse into the atmosphere. Well, if there's a big sludge blanket over top of it, it's going to carry it with it, right? So that's what happened. You also want to prevent septicity from it staying down there too long. How you prevent septicity for the most part in a treatment plant is just keep stuff moving, okay? Keep it moving. And that's not what happened, right? So this is a symptom of what happens when your withdrawal rate is too low, The reason you want it to be at the proper withdrawal rate is you want to maintain Clarifier solids removal efficiency. How is removal efficiency hurt when your removal's too low? Well, that rising sludge blanket, that big sludge raft sitting at the top of the clarifier, as the primary effluent tries to go past it, it kind of makes some turbulence past that blanket, and it takes some of those solids over the weirs and onto the next process. Well, you might ask, well, who cares? Like, what does a removal efficiency even matter? Well, why do we have primary clarifiers? It's to protect secondary treatment, like a trickling filter, like I have. So you might ask, Sean, what did you do in that situation when you had to clean up that sludge? How did you not violate your permit? How did your BODs not go off the rails? Here is how. I have a membrane bioreactor as well. Okay, they run in parallel. I had the capacity at the time. I was strategic about my time that I took, the time of day that I went and cleaned all that up. And anything that carried over the weirs went to the membrane bioreactor that has the activated sludge capable of taking influent that has not gone through clarification yet. There's a lot of activated sludge plants out there that don't have primary clarification. The reason I have it is to lighten the load on my trickling filter. The trickling filter is not designed for raw influent, all right? It's just not. So that's why you're gonna wanna have your sludge withdrawal out of the clarifier. You're removing a ton of BOD out of there with this sludge, okay? So I just kicked the air up in my MBR, and I did it strategically throughout the day, not all at once, because if I did it all at once, I could have overloaded my MBR. So I was just very strategic about how I did it, methodical, and anything that I wasn't able to mechanically skim off the top and get into the pit that would pump to the anaerobic digester where it should have gone in the first place. If any of that stuff went over the weirs, it went to the membrane bioreactor, and I was fine. Okay, so that's how I managed it. Once it was resolved, I just diverted flow back to the trickling filter. Happy day. Didn't have any issues. In terms of permit stuff. It was just a lot of work, and it was a pain. And I don't necessarily want to do that again. So the other reason you're going to be withdrawing at the proper rate is you want to maintain desired sludge concentration. Okay, so we've talked about what happens when our withdrawal rate's too low. The concentration gets pretty thick, which is great. We want thick sludge, but we run into the risk of rising sludge, right? Well, if it's too high, we're going to be pumping a very thin sludge, which can be problematic. Now, I just did a video at a different plant that should be coming out in the next week or two, maybe 3. It depends on them approving all that we talked about. But in their plant, he talks about that they don't maintain a sludge blanket in their primary clarifier. The reason why, he explains, but I'll let him do that. But the reason why he gets away with it is because they have a sludge thickener. A thickener. So if he were to take that really thin sludge and pump it right to his anaerobic digester, it would cost him a ton of money in heat exchanging and trying to heat that stuff up. And you're not going to get as good of a volatile solids reduction because you got a lot of hydraulic overload of the digesters. But he doesn't have to worry about that because he goes to a thickener. I don't have a thickener. So I want to maintain a sludge blanket of some amount. And I found between 6 inches and a foot is good for me. Okay, but that's just me. Every plant's different. I've seen some plants run a 2-foot sludge blanket in their primary. It's over time and observation, you will be able to make the determination what blanket you should run. But if you don't have a thickener and you're withdrawing too fast, your sludge will be too thin, and that will be problematic for your digester. Another reason that you want proper withdrawal rate is it prevents mechanical stress. These gear reductions, these scrapers, are under load, and I've got 2 different Clarifier videos. Actually, I got 3. I'll put them all in the description below, and I'll make one of them pop up on your screen at the end of this. But you can see these mechanisms in both of the videos. And actually, in one of them, I more draw it on the board. It was our secondary Clarifier. We fixed the mechanism there. But I explained that, you know, if the sludge gets too thick down below, it can jam up the rakes and cause a ton of torque on your drive, and it could cause a shear pin to break, could cause your torque protection to trip, and if you don't have any of those things, it could cause your gear reduction to bind, okay? So you're preventing mechanical stress by not letting it get too thick. So this would be if your sludge withdrawal rate was too low, you would have mechanical stress. If your withdrawal rate was too high, it would be thin, and so you wouldn't have a lot of mechanical stress. So that would be if it's too low. And the last thing is you control downstream digester performance. I already talked about that with the thickening and, you know, pumping thin sludge to your digester. It can wreck a ton of stuff if you're pumping a bunch of water. Water is really difficult to heat up, costs a lot of money. You want as little water as possible going to your digester. So those of us without thickeners, we have to do something about that, maintain some kind of a blanket, okay? And I just want to note real quick before we get to the math problem, I'm talking about primary clarifiers. I'm not talking about secondary clarifiers. That would be a return rate and a WAS rate, or WAS, however you say it, waste activated sludge. That's a different conversation altogether, okay? I'm literally just talking about the stuff that falls out in a primary clarifier and you move it to a digester, okay? It doesn't go to any other process besides digestion and then dewatering after that. So this is important. Even if you don't have a primary clarifier in your plant, you need to know about this stuff for your exams. You're gonna be asked about this stuff. Okay, let's read this math problem, and then I'm gonna explain a couple things about what this math problem even means, and then we're gonna work it out. A WRF has an influent flow of 7 mgd and a TSS concentration of 300 milligrams per liter. The primary clarifier effluent TSS is 180 milligrams per liter, and the plant effluent TSS is 3 milligrams per liter. The total solids concentration at the bottom of the clarifier is 2.5%. Your primary sludge pump runs twice hourly at 150 GPM. How many minutes should the timer be set to run the pump each time it is called for in order to remove all solids from the bottom of the clarifier? So quick note about sludge pumps, like particularly when we're talking about primary clarifiers. You don't let it all accumulate at the bottom for the whole day and then pump it all out at once. It's not how it works. That would be too low of a withdrawal rate. That's where you're getting the mechanisms getting damaged, or gasification and floating sludge blankets. You have to take it out small amounts throughout the day, and that also helps the digester. The digester gets fed throughout the day in small amounts, not just get smacked with all the volatile solids all at once. That's a great way to foam over and cause problems in your digester. You want to do a little bit at a time, right? And the other thing I want to talk about with the setting of the timer using this math problem is this is a kind of baseline. This is math telling you where to go and where to start, and the rest of your timer setting really has to do with sludge judging and observation as an operator through time. Not every math problem gets you right on the nose all the time. There's dynamics that change throughout the day, okay? So you're always out there sludge judging and taking a look. So let's work this math problem out. First things first is I'm gonna have to figure out how many pounds of TSS settle at the bottom of the clarifier. I'm gonna subtract 300 milligrams per liter by 180 milligrams per liter, okay? that's going to give me 120 milligrams per liter. Why? Because I took the raw TSS influent at 300 and subtracted the primary clarifier effluent, not the plant effluent. That's a smoke screen. Don't worry about that 3 milligrams per liter. 120 milligrams per liter is what actually was removed in the primary clarifier. It's got to go somewhere, and in this situation, it settled to the bottom of the clarifier. So now what I'm going to do is figure out my pounds per day of TSS settling in the clarifier. And if you're unfamiliar with the pounds formula, you need to know how to do it. I will link to it in the description. You can go check that out. So 7 times 8.34 times 120 milligrams per liter gives me what? 7,006 pounds per day TSS. All right, well, that doesn't help me set my timer, does it? It does when you have this other piece of information, that the concentration at the bottom of the clarifier is 2.5%. If you're new to the channel, I've talked about this a lot, 1% equals, oops, sorry, hit the little button there, 1% equals 10,000 parts per million or milligrams per liter. Those two units are synonymous. That means 2.5% equals 25,000 milligrams per liter, okay? So now watch. 7,006 pounds per day TSS, just a reverse pounds formula, divided by 8.34, divided by what? 25,000 milligrams per liter. Gives me, I'm going to punch this in my calculator, 25,000, gives me 0.0336 mgd. Okay, that's million gallons per day. Now, I'm going to come down here and go, I'm going to convert it to gallons per day. So that's 0.0336 mgd times 1 million gallons per mg. Okay? If you're unfamiliar with what I just did, this is called the conversion factor method or dimensional analysis. I'll link to that also in the description so you can see how to convert units. I'm left with gallons per day. So this is 33,600 gallons per day. Okay? Now I'm getting somewhere because I've got this pump. All right? Your primary sludge pump runs twice hourly at 150 GPM. Okay, let's convert that. Now I've got 33,600 gallons per day. And to keep things simple for those that they do the railroads instead of the multiplication like I like to do, I like to use this X. You don't have to do that. In essence, you're just multiplying across the top, dividing across the bottom, right? So let's convert these units. I've got 150 gallons per minute. Okay, and I've got 24 hours in a day. Okay, so now what do? 33,600. All right, 33,600 divided by 150 gallons per minute divided by 24 hours in a day gives me 9.33 minutes. Okay, because what's minutes per hour? Okay, hours are left, days cancel out. Gallons cancel out, minutes per hour is what I'm left with. But I was not asked how many minutes per hour. My primary sludge pump runs twice hourly, okay? So now I have to divide this number by 2, 9.33, because there's 24 hours in a day, it's really 48 starts, okay? So 9.33 divided by 2, okay? And that's going to give me 4.66, we'll call it 4.67, however you want to round it. Call it 4.67 minutes per start, I'll call this unit, okay, per start. And if you might need to actually transfer this 0.67 into seconds on an exam, and how you just do that is 0.67 times what? How many seconds in a minute? 60 seconds in a minute. 0.67 minutes. Minutes cancel out, and that gives me what? 0.67 times 60 is 40 seconds. Okay, so it's really 4 minutes, 40 seconds per start. Okay, that is your answer. So I would set twice hourly this pump to run 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I hope that helped. Put any questions you have down in the comments below, anything to add. If there's other reasons that you run different ways in your plant with your sludge blanket, please put in the comments below, help people out. And I hope you got something out of this today. Catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day.